Hello to all the rugby league diehards and welcome to another episode of Six to Go. My name is Tom Campbell and it's great to have your company. As we head into today's episode, you know how it works. We'll cover 6 topics related to the game or even their own career. My guest this week is Jamie Soward, former State of Origin player for the Panthers and premiership winner with St George Illawarra Dragons. Jamie is one of the most accomplished halves of the past 20 years. He's now transitioned into the coaching and media world and I was happy to have him on the show this week. Hope you enjoy our chat. Here's Jamie Soward. I'm joined by Jamie Soward as the next guest of the Six to Go podcast. Hey, Jamie, how are you, mate?
Yeah, good. Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.
No worries. It's a thrill to have you on, and I've got 6 topics to cover with you today, and I'll kick things off with the trials so far. Xavier Savage looked outstanding for the Raiders last week. What did the Raiders do with him and Charles Nicholl-Clockster?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, firstly, who the halves sort of want there in terms of the cohesiveness that Charles Nicholl-Clockster had with Jack Whiten when they went to a grand final. How is Nicholl-Clockster's fitness coming back from that? Is he still able to play fullback? And you look at Savage, who's a young gun. Can he defensively be able to put up the numbers that Ricky Stewart needs to in terms of stopping tries and getting people in place? If you notice, in that first trial, whilst he was on fire with the ball, he did let a try in as well. So I think Nicholl-Clockster will move to the centres and Savage will get the nod, but Ricky Stewart will be wanting his defence to be able to stand up a little bit more if he's going to be a regular first grader.
So you think they can fit both into the same team, Xavier and Chance?
Yeah, well, I mean, the last couple of years, Jared Croker has had some injuries, so I think that would definitely come into it. And what they do the other side of the field is going to be interesting as well. I think the Raiders had to go through a transition the last couple of years after that grand final. They probably missed the jump, and they still had a quality side with their forward pack, but they probably missed an opportunity to get younger a little bit quicker. Now they got Jamal Fogarty there, so there's no real excuse that they don't have a halfback. So they could bounce back in a big way.
The Dragons had a great comeback to beat the Eels. I know it's only a trial, but I really think the Dragons can make the 8 this year, or at least give it a good go. What are your expectations for them this year?
Yeah, it's a good answer to have when you ring me for an interview to be able to push the Dragons' case. I think, looking at it 2 ways. Obviously, with my ties with working at the club, working with the NRL squad, we've had a lot of depth to our team and that experience in positions. Moses Mbye can play 1 to 17. Aaron Woods can give us some big minutes in the middle, and you throw in George Burgess and also a couple of other guys there in Moses Sewell, Tautau Moga, Jaden Sewer. Last year we didn't have that, so that depth and experience comes in. Now, if you take Dragons hat off and you're just looking at it purely from a football point of view, there's going to have to be some improvement from some of those young guys who got opportunities last year. They're going to have to really take a step up. I think that's what everyone's waiting on. Can those the Sloans and Ramseys and fair guys, Sullivans, Amon, can they take that next step into being a regular first grader? Because when you're not expected to play first grade, life's probably at its best because you go and play games and, there's no real pressure on. When you're expected to be a first grader, that's what is the difference, being a one-year wonder or playing a couple hundred games. So they'll need to work through it, and I think they can this year.
For the Dragons, we've seen both Sloan and Ramsey play fullback at different stages. What do you think? Who starts at 1?
I've got no idea. No, I think that both of them, have pros and cons. You've also got, the added experience of Moses Mbye can play anywhere in your back line as well. So I think that, they're all learning and competing against each other. Tyrell's such an ad-lib sort of off-the-cuff player, and that's great to have at certain stages, but it also is heart and mouth stuff when you're trying to win a cycle in the NRL. And Cody's 100 mile an hour, but they've still got a couple of little mistakes they need to tidy up. So I have no idea, genuinely have no idea who's in front at the moment.
Was there anyone else who really stood out to you in any of the preseason games we've had so far?
No, I just thought it was great. A few people were sort of, saying who's this and who's that. Well, this is what we've never had the trials before. So on TV, where all of them have been shown, and I think if you have a look at, I only probably watched the Dragons one really, really closely, and was going off like that. But if you just have a look at some of the young talent coming through, I think it's, I've been saying we need a national reserve grade competition so that we can see those guys every single week. Up against the best, and then they're prepared for first grade. So I think that's probably the highlight for me, is seeing those guys get an opportunity in first grade trials, and then hopefully we see them later in the year.
Hey, Jamie, I'd love to have a chat to you about a story going around at the moment in regards to player managers and deals. Jerome Hughes, his manager's been quite vocal and come out on the record saying that they want 6 years, $5 million, I think it is, from Melbourne, or else they're happy to go elsewhere. When you're coming to the end of your contract, or there's a year to be taken up on the deal that you'll decline, how stressful is that as a player's perspective?
Yeah, it is stressful. You're ringing your manager. Your manager's ringing you every time you got an offer, and you're trying to sort out your future. And I was never in that caliber of money. When I was at the Dragons, I was looking for a longer deal, and sort of had an idea of what I wanted, which was 3 or 4 years, and Penrith gave me 4, and Dragons are offering me 1. So you want that security, but I think that it's a murky water at the moment. The whole player manager going out and pretty much there's no limit on when they can talk about contracts. I mean, Jerome Hughes got 2 years left. He's got this year and next year. So I'm confused as to why the game hasn't come out and made it a period, and let the managers go and talk. That's their job, but you shouldn't be able to come out and manipulate and release it through the media and create, because it creates pressure and it creates a distaste for that player. I mean, if Jerome Hughes I think he's worth that 6 years, $5 million, but if one club's willing to pay him 1.1 and they're not in the top 5 or 6 teams, and then Melbourne fans get off him, he's still got 2 years to go or a year to go. Like, I just don't understand in how that makes the player better, or how it makes the club and their loyalty to fans and sell jerseys and all that. It's really confusing and murky situation if you're a player right now, because you can sign so far out.
Is that that's a good point. That I think rugby league is, if it's not the only sport in the world, it's certainly on a short list where you sign over 12 months in advance. Like, for example, players that are off contract for the following year can negotiate on November 1. Do you think it'll come a time where we go to more of a sort of an NBA, NFL type thing where you're off contract and then you get signed for the next year? Do you think that's inevitable?
Yeah, I think longer term deals are going away in the game. Yeah. I think you look at the situation in North Queensland right now with Jason Tamalolo. When he signed that contract, I dare say that we probably all thought that they got the best player in the world, best forward in the world, really cheaply. Then the game changed a little bit. Now it's like, oh, well, is he worth that? Do you get the output and all that kind of stuff? So I'd like to get to a situation where you could just trade players and do it like that. And I get that's a little bit risky, but that way you may be able to have more salary cap. It might be, say, if it was $12 million, but the players knew that they were going to get that money, but they could be traded, and have a period where you can trade up to the deadline. But we also want some consistency as well. There needs to be a period, much like the rules. We don't want the rules changing every year. We also want the consistency with when players can sign because managers will always talk. But if you only had a period of when they could talk, it'd tighten everyone and keep everyone in line. But releasing it itself, it's a big wheel that, like I said, sometimes gets a little murky.
If you were to bring in a trading window, it would inevitably be talked about that you're bringing a draft as well. Would you support a draft?
No.
No?
No, I don't think a draft would work. And the draft only works in certain situations in America because they actually have colleges and universities that are, making millions and millions of dollars. So they prep that athlete to get that exposure to get more money into their program. And then the NBA is a professional league, or the NFL. So over here, we're starting to recruit kids at 15, 16, develop them, and then hopefully, get them into first grade. Now that if you signed with the Dragons at 16 or 15 and we develop you into a first grader, why should we have to pay $500,000 because someone else wants to pay $500,000 to take you? There needs to be more done for that, and that would stop the draft, because right now there wouldn't be the talent for a draft, I don't feel. And even if you would draft, I don't know how many of those kids, if you drafted 16 or even if you had 2 rounds and you had 34 players next year with Redcliffe, I don't know if there'd be 34 players that go straight into a first grade team, much like the NBA where the top 10 probably are starting straight away and their franchise changes, whereas we've got kids that have really, really excelled in their juniors and been talented and won competitions and done all that stuff, and they do an NRL preseason, and it's like you got to start back at one again. They think they know everything, but you got to start them back because you're playing against men and you're playing the toughest sport in the world, where you have to do both things, both sides of the ball. You don't have to throw the ball, and then when it's defence, you go off the field. You don't have to just shoot the ball and not defend. You've got to be able to do both. So, I don't think a draft would work.
That's a fair point. I'd like to ask you about Wayne Bennett. When you look back on your time with Wayne, how did he help you and your game personally?
I think Wayne just cared about me. He made my strengths stronger and said that we'd work on that. And if it was running the ball or kicking and passing, he said just work on that and make that your craft and get better at it. And then defensively, just get your body in front. And I'm going through the same thing right now. I've got 2 young halves in the NRLW team, and I said the same thing to them. I'm not expecting them to make 50 tackles, but I want them to be really good at what they're in the team to do, which is the kicking, passing, running. So Wayne just made me feel really comfortable in my own skin and, accepted me for me. I'm a bit of a weird cat. I tell things straight, but I also like things a certain way. And, my wife often teases me about things, but he accepted me for me and, didn't expect me to change just because I was in the team. Jonathan Thurston was taking the ball to the line. He knew that wasn't my strength, so he wasn't sending out messages going, mate, you got to take the ball to the line. You got to take the ball to the line. I've played for coaches that, have a run, get in there and have a run. You're like, this is an under sixes, I know what I'm doing, and I sometimes I need encouragement like that, but other times I just need to be left to do my job. So he made me feel really comfortable in my own skin.
He goes to the Dolphins for next year. What do you make of their recruits so far?
Really experienced. I think that they'll almost, if they can land a halfback, that's the key right now. There's some experience there in Nichols and Kafusi and the Bromwich brothers and stuff like that. So they're going to be really steely, much like Souths were last year, I guess, in their pack. But, that big chip to fall is going to be who the halfback is and who the 9 is. If they can get that sorted, they almost come into contention to make the 8 because you've got Wayne Bennett. And we saw, with the ragtag Queensland squad a couple of years ago, they won State of Origin, and it's probably the worst side ever, as some people thought. I didn't. I knew what Queensland would be like, but I think they become really competitive, but there's still a couple of chips to fall and some players that are going to be unhappy that they're going to be able to pick up, probably really cheap and under the guidance of Wayne Bennett, be successful.
For a new club to come in, I think it's important for them to be relevant straight away, not necessarily premiership contenders, but at least relevant. How long do you think it is before we start discussing them in premiership contention?
Again, we're sort of only looking at we've only got half or a quarter of the puzzle in place, so it's hard to put predictions on that. I think that Wayne Bennett, in that 3 years, they'd be expecting, maybe not the first year, but the second and third year, they'd be expecting to go to week 2 of the finals, depending on their squad. Yeah. But you've also got to remember that, they're trying to build a club for the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years. You look at the Titans, when they came in, they made the finals the first year, a prelim final at Huntington in 2010, and then it's been lean pickings afterwards, and they sort of had maybe a similar recipe where they signed a lot of older guys towards the back end of their career, and they probably just didn't get it right after those guys left. But one thing about Wayne Bennett is he's going to have a competitive squad, whoever he has, and the people that take over afterwards are going to have the job of making sure that they've got youngsters in place that can come through and be successful as well.
One thing you were known for, Jamie, was your kicking game. When it comes to a playmaker's kicking game, how much do you credit having success with pre-match preparation?
99.9%.
Yeah.
It's I was telling my girls the other day just about what to expect, and some of them have never played in front of fans before, or more than 10 or 20 at the local ground. But when I came out to warm up, I was ready to go. I only warmed up because that's what everyone wanted to do, and you had to show the fans that we're actually doing something to get ready. Like I was in a lather. In horse racing terms, I'd had a bit of sweat over me, ready to go. Like I just did it out there because probably to get a feel of the ground and stuff as well. But my preparation was always ready to go. And like I said, I'm a weirdo. I like things a certain way, so it's no different. Being a coach now, I'm sort of doing this interview and half looking at some game tape, being ready to go and being prepped for my first game as coach. But preparation, I think, it is for any young kid. And probably the biggest thing is not thinking that everyone prepares the same. I remember sitting in dressing rooms and Wendell Saylor dancing and carrying on. And I hadn't started my prep yet, but I was actually just sitting down, having a bit of a yawn and a bit of a snooze. And Wayne showed it the next week. He's like, you just all preparing your own way. Don't let anyone else jeopardise your preparation. So I'll just carry that on and pass that on to my girls.
Was there other players in the competition that you'd watch in particular that influenced the plans you'd make in regards to your kicking game? Sorry.
Well, Billy changed the game for everyone. I remember the Titans kicking it into touch, and everyone tried to do that. And Jared Hayne burned us in 2009, and the first game in 2010 we played him at Parramatta. I think I put it dead on the full. I think it was about 15 rows back. I didn't even try to pull it up. So those guys are always dangerous. But I think the thing for me is you talk about preparation, but you got to prepare your last play options as well. Where you're standing, how far back, who's at marker, who's on the ball at fullback, is the winger back, is he up, does he like the ball on the ground? And one probably thing that comes back to my mind is 2014 playing a semi-final against the Roosters at the SFS, and doing some video that week, and Gus sort of mentioned that Anthony Minicello likes to run around to get the ball, and that means when he's at fullback, if the ball's around him, he doesn't like attacking it straight at him. He likes to run around and do like a little fish hook to go and get the ball. So if you go back and watch that game, towards the end of the game, we get him once where I sort of punch it low and he sort of half arcs around, catches it, and nearly goes into touch. And then we go down there again, and we ended up with the sort of last play try. He was just waiting for the ball to go, so we'd done that, and we ended up scoring the try. And then the next kick, he and Tupu were sort of running around to get the ball again. So that's kind of picking up those little tips and listening to. And also working out for yourself, I think, is always important. But those guys, I played against some good fullbacks, so I've always had to try and be prepared as best I can.
Matt Burton goes from the Panthers to the Bulldogs this year. I think he's a phenomenal young player, but I can see this being a tough season for him just based on the fact that at Penrith he was the fourth or fifth option. Now he goes to a team where he's expected to be the chief playmaker. I see some people having the Dogs in the top 8. I don't really buy that at all. Can you talk to me about the challenge he's going to encounter this year?
Yeah, well, he hasn't played a lot of 5'8" the last 3 years. That's the first thing for me. On that left side for the Panthers, left centre, it's all right when Cleary's kicking into field position and Luai's running around and Dylan Edwards bringing the ball back. And we saw probably in the first week of the trials, the Dogs still got some growing pains. I know they didn't have their full team, but the 7 for them is a real problem.
Yeah.
And if Matt Burton's waiting to get the ball, or they're not in position, they haven't got a 7 or 9 that's just dominant enough where he's going to have to pretty much be the dad straight away at such a young age. So I'm sure he'll encounter some problems. I didn't have him in my 8 this year. I think that there's still going to be some growing pains, but for him, if he can get the best out of that forward pack and they can get him in position, and you can just get a steady 7 that can kick you in and give you enough chances, then you may be able to cause some upsets. But I think it's going to be a tough year as well.
Looks like it'll be between Kyle Flanagan and Jake Averillo for that half spot. Who do you think will get the nod, at least to start the season?
Yeah, I'm probably the worst person to ask. I'm a little bit biased. I've had a lot to do with Kyle, and I think he's an astute learner of the game who's probably just been pushed aside because he went into a back-to-back Roosters title, didn't win a title, and then came to the Bulldogs and again, with a forward pack that didn't really put him in position, had to come up with some big plays and a new attacking structure with no fullback, no number 9. That's sort of, to win, you got to have one of your spine players has to be in the top 5 or 6 in the competition, and then that breeds confidence to everyone else. So they didn't have any. I think they were down the bottom in terms of combinations and stuff like that. So Jake Averillo seems like he'd be the perfect 14 to come off. I'd actually like to see him at hooker. I think he's tough enough. He can fast out a dummy half, and he's got a kicking game that could help give that extra option there. But at 7, it just looks a little bit manufactured rather than a little natural like with Kyle.
You've recently been named coach of the Dragons NRLW side. Can you tell me how that's going?
Yeah, we haven't won or lost yet, so that's great. I sort of said to my wife when I retired, she said, do you want to get into coaching? And I'd love to, but I want to do it when I'm older and we've had kids and all that kind of stuff. And, 4 years later, I've had 2 girls and, life's really good. And then all of a sudden you get a chance, your first major coaching job is in the NRLW where there's only 6 coaches.
Yep.
I've never been in charge of a team before. I've done assistant coaching. I've ran the water. I've played a heap of footy, obviously. I know everything about it, but there's still some, challenges and hurdles for me that I've gone through this last 6 weeks, and stuff that I've had to own because I'm direct and intense and emotional and all that kind of stuff. So it's going great. I love it. I didn't think I'd be doing it this early, but I'm glad I just jumped into it, and I'm getting some experience. And I had 3 months with the NRL team, which I'm still working with, but 3 months not having to worry about NRLW too much, where I can just learn and see what works and how players react and how they coach and all that kind of stuff. So, it's going great. I don't know when this interview goes out, but Sunday, 12 o'clock, 27th of Feb, I'll be pretty nervous, I'd say.
Well, it goes out tomorrow, so being Saturday. So, make sure you tune in for that. Is coaching a path you always wanted to pursue? Like, did you know that as a player that you wanted to pursue that?
I'd worked hard to sort of climb the media ladder.
Yep.
And it's a long ladder, as you would appreciate.
Yes.
You've got to hunt down your own opportunities. You're never really safe in the media. But the coaching was always, I love watching footy. Like, I love talking about footy. I love watching footy. And I think, once I sort of started, like, I get really excited for the girls to come to training. And when we talk about a play or we talk about doing something right, and when we do it or when we learn together. So I think it was probably always there. I just needed a little bit of push or an opportunity. The times I've been involved in teams, I really love just talking footy. So it's, I guess it was always there, if that's the answer.
We've seen the women's game grow tremendously over the past few years. Obviously, COVID threw a spanner in that, not only for the NRLW, but for a lot of sports. Where do you see the women's game going over the next 10 years?
Well, I think firstly, we've got to get more games, and then not necessarily more teams. So the talent pool this year, I think you'll see is it's growing. Whether it's all of the same standard is yet to be seen, and I hope that it is. But we need to be playing each other at least twice, and then grow it that way, rather than just trying to give everyone an NRLW license and then having the disparities that we see in both state league competitions where for part time they're just not there. They're not there physically, they're not there mentally, and they're not there financially. So, I'd love to see the game grow, to 3 games for State of Origin. Gillaroos, playing 3 tests against New Zealand at the end of the year, and then have the NRLW play 2 rounds against each other. And the girls, they'll handle it, but we need to do that first, and then we can talk about pay and all that kind of stuff. But I'd like to think in the next 10 years we get to a solid, maybe 10-team competition or 8-team competition where we play each other twice or maybe 3 times, in conjunction with the men's maybe start a little bit later and play, because it's not going anywhere, the women's game. But I'd like to think that we get to that at some stage.
Well, Jamie, that's all I've got for you. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show today. Like I said earlier, it's been a big thrill to have you on, and hopefully not the last time.
No worries, mate. Appreciate it, and good luck for the year, and go the Dragons.
A big thanks to Jamie for coming on the show today. You can catch him on his socials or even his own podcast, which you can find on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. By the way, if you want to get in contact with me, you can on Twitter @TCanfell, and don't forget to give the 6 to Go Facebook page a like as well. My name is Tom Canfell. Thanks so much for listening. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe. And until next time, this has been the 6 to Go podcast, and that is full time.